It is Memorial Day, so happy Memorial Day to you. It's the beginning of another week here in San Francisco. My name is Sophie, and thank you for coming to Storytime today. Let me just hook this over here, and let's begin. So I wanted to do, because today is Memorial Day, I wanted to do things that were part of my memories, like things that I really love and enjoy. And so I want to start out with Where the Sidewalk Ends, Shel Silverstein. As you know, he's one of my favorites, if you follow me. And I want to read the story that started it all for me, the poem that started it all for me. I heard this poem and I fell in love with this poem, and because of it, I became a huge Shel Silverstein fan. This is called Sick. I cannot go to school today, said little Peggy Ann McKay. I had the measles and the mumps, a gash, a rash, and purple bumps. My mouth is wet, my throat is dry, I'm going blind in my right eye. My tonsils are as big as rocks. I counted 16 chicken pox. And there's one more. That's 17. Oh, and don't you think my face looks green? My leg is cut, my eyes are blue. I think it's instamatic flu. I cough and sneeze and gasp and choke. I'm sure that my left leg is broke. My hip hurts when I move my chin. My belly button's caving in. My back is wrenched, my ankle's sprained. My appendix pains each time it rains. My nose is cold, my toes are numb. I have a sliver in my thumb. My neck is stiff, my voice is weak. I hardly whisper when I speak. My tongue is filling up my mouth. I think my hair is falling out. My elbow's bent. My spine ain't straight. My temperature is 108. My brain is shrunk. I cannot hear. There is a hole inside my ear. I have a hangnail and my heart is... What? What's that? What's that you say? You say today is Saturday? Goodbye. I'm going out to play. And there you have it. Sick. Isn't that cute? I've always loved that story. And I just think that is what got me started with Shel Silverstein being one of my favorite writers. Excuse me, a little bit of a tickle in the throat. As my mom always used to say, a hairball for a cat. We don't have any cats, but my parents do. I don't, but my parents do. And a lot of my friends do. Well, let's say hello, shall we? Hello, how are you? Oh, hello. How are you? Oh, hello. How are you? I'm just fine today. I'm glad to see you here today. I'm glad to see you here today. I'm glad to see you here today. I'm so glad to see you. Well, you know, it's the beginning of the week, so let's stretch really tall and wake ourselves up, shall we? Stretch, stretch, stretch as tall as you can, and stretch, stretch, stretch as tall as you can, and stretch, stretch, stretch as tall as you can. I'm so glad to see you. Okay, so we stretched really tall. Let's reach down and touch our toes. We're going to really warm our bodies up today. Reach right down and touch your toes, and reach right down and touch your toes, and reach right down and touch your toes. I'm so glad to see you. Very good. Well, let's stretch side to side. And you can either sit in your seat or you can stand where you are. And let's stretch side to side. Stand where you are and stretch side to side, or sit where you are and stretch side to side. Stand where you are and stretch side to side. I'm so glad to see you. Well, we've warmed up our body. How about if we warm up our faces by making some funny faces? Here we go. Little boys, as funny as you can, and make a funny face as funny as you can, and make a funny face as funny as you can. I'm so glad to see you. Okay, everybody, let's wave hello. Hello, how are you? Oh, hello. How are you? Oh, hello. How are you? I'm just fine today. Well, good morning. Thank you so much for inviting me into your home or onto your device. I'm so excited to share some of my favorite stories and songs with you. These are all stories and songs that I adored when I was a child. And I have to thank the library. That is really, really wonderful. They have put out this new thing where they are letting people borrow 3 books. And they actually sent them through the mail to me, or somebody actually physically dropped them off. I'm not sure. They just appeared at my door. But one of the ones I wanted to read is Harold and the Purple Crayon by Crockett Johnson. This is one of my favorite all-time books from when I was a little girl. Harold and the Purple Crayon by Crockett Johnson. This is one of the things that got me as a child interested in art, because Harold creates an entire world just with his purple crayon. Harold and the Purple Crayon by Crockett Johnson. Harold and the Purple Crayon. One evening, after thinking it over for some time, Harold decided to go for a walk in the moonlight. There wasn't any moon, and Harold needed a moon for the walk in the moonlight, and he needed something to walk on. He made a long, straight path so he wouldn't get lost, and he set off on his walk, taking his big purple crayon with him. But he didn't seem to be getting anywhere on that long, straight path. So he left the path for a short cut across a field, and the moon went with him. The shortcut led right to where Harold thought a forest ought to be. He didn't want to get lost in the woods, so he made a very small forest with just one tree in it. It turned out to be an apple tree. The apples would be very tasty, Harold thought, when they got red. So he put a frightening dragon under the tree to guard the apples. It was a terribly frightening dragon. It even frightened Harold. He backed away. His hand holding the purple crayon shook. Suddenly, he realized what was happening, but then Harold was over his head in an ocean. He came up, thinking fast, and in no time he was climbing aboard a trim little boat. He quickly set sail, and the moon sailed along with him. After he had sailed long enough, Harold made land without much trouble. He stepped ashore on the beach, wondering where he was. The sandy beach reminded Harold of picnics, and the thought of picnics made him hungry. So he laid out a nice, simple picnic lunch. There was nothing but pie. But there were all 9 kinds of pie that Harold liked best. That's a lot of pie. When Harold finished his picnic, there was quite a lot left. He hated to see so much delicious pie go to waste. So Harold left a very hungry moose and a deserving porcupine to finish up. And off he went, looking for a hill to climb to see where he was. Harold knew that the higher up he went, the farther he could see. So he decided to make the hill into a mountain. If he went high enough, he thought, he could see the window of his bedroom. He was tired, and he felt that he ought to be going to bed. He hoped that he could see his bedroom window from the top of the mountain. But as he looked down over the other side, he slipped, and there wasn't any other side of the mountain. He was falling in thin air. But luckily, he kept his wits and his purple crayon. He made a balloon, and he grabbed onto it. He's a very smart little boy, isn't he? And he made a basket under the balloon big enough to stand in. He had a fine view from the balloon, but he couldn't see his window. He couldn't even see his house. So he made a house with windows, and he landed the balloon on the grass in the front yard. None of the windows was his windows. So he tried to think where his window ought to be. He made lots of buildings full of windows. He made a whole city full of windows. That's a big city, isn't it? Can you see the moon is still there? But none of the windows was his window. He couldn't think where it might be. Think he might be getting a little bit worried? He decided to ask a policeman. The policeman pointed the way Harold was going anyway, but Harold thanked him. And he walked along with the moon, wishing that he was in his room and in his bed. Then, suddenly, Harold remembered. He remembered where his bedroom window was when there was a moon. It was always right around the moon. And then Harold made his bed, and he got in, and he drew up the covers. And the purple crayon dropped on the floor, and Harold dropped off to sleep. And that is Harold and the Purple Crayon. And like I said, this is one of those books that inspired me as a child. I loved creating my own worlds with crayons and markers and that sort of thing, and pencils. And I think it was because of Harold and the Purple Crayon. So that is by Crockett Johnson, and it's a fantastic book. Well, one of the songs that I always loved to do when I did birthday parties was a song called the Hokey Pokey, because it got everybody moving. So what you do is you put a portion of your body in, whatever part I tell you to put in, and you put it in, then you put it out, and you shake it all about. And to do the Hokey Pokey, you take your hands and go like this, and you turn around in a circle. So let's do the Hokey Pokey. Now, one of the things is it always says, put your right foot in, put your right foot out. Now, I happen to be one of those people that has trouble remembering right from left. I know that seems silly, but I do. And so I like to say just put one foot in and one foot out, or one arm in or one arm out. And then just make sure you do the other one when it's the next time. Here we go. You put your one foot in, you put your one foot out, you put your one foot in, and you shake it all about. You do the Hokey Pokey and you turn yourself around. That's what it's all about. Other foot, you put your other foot in, you put your other foot out, you put your other foot in, and you shake it all about. You do the Hokey Pokey and you turn yourself around. That's what it's all about. One arm, you put your one arm in, you put your one arm out, you put your one arm in and you shake it all about. You do the hokey pokey and you turn yourself around. Oh, that's what it's all about. Other arm, you put your other arm in, you put your other arm out, you put your other arm in and you shake it all about. You do the hokey pokey and you turn yourself around. That's what it's all about. Your head, you put your head in, you put your head out, you put your head in and you shake it all about. You do the hokey pokey and you turn yourself around. Oh, that's what it's all about. Your tummy, put your tummy in, you put your tummy out, you put your tummy in and you shake it all about. You do the hokey pokey and you turn yourself around. Oh, that's what it's all about. Your backside, you put your backside in, you put your backside out, you put your backside in and you shake it all about. You do the hokey pokey and you turn yourself around. That's what it's all about. Whole self, you put your whole self in, you put your whole self out, you put your whole self in and you shake it all about. You do the hokey pokey and you turn yourself around. Oh, that's what it's all about. And now we're just going to do the hokey pokey. Ready? Just keep waving those hands and turning in circles. Here we go. You do the hokey pokey. You do the hokey pokey. You do the hokey pokey. Oh, that's what it's all about. Very good. That was some good dancing I saw out there doing the hokey pokey. Always used to love that. It's so much fun. I love especially when you put your backside in and then when you put your whole self in, when you put your tummy in. There's some fun parts to that. Well, I want to share with you a story that I read when I was a child. I believe the first time I ever saw this book was a teacher of mine. Her name was Mrs. Davis. Shared it with our class. And this was a groundbreaking book. I grew up in Philadelphia, and this book was a groundbreaking book. I think it came out in 1965 or 1967 when I was just a little child. This is by Ezra Jack Keats, and it's called The Snowy Day. This is the 50th anniversary of it, so coming up here. So this is called The Snowy Day by Ezra Jack Keats. Ezra Jack Keats, who's an amazing writer. Ezra Jack Keats, The Snowy Day. And I love his illustrations. The illustrations are very similar to Eric Carle's illustrations or some of the other illustrations that I've shared with you in some of the other books, like Leo Leone's books, where they use paper and different textures in the book. You'll see. They're beautiful. To Tick, John, and Rosalie. And I'm not sure if it was Ezra Jack Keats who started this technique or if it was the others, but it's a really cool technique. You can see all these different patterns and different papers. One morning, Peter woke up and looked out the window. Snow had fallen during the night. It covered everything as far as he could see. After breakfast, he put on his snowsuit and ran outside. The snow was piled up very high along the street to make a path for walking. Crunch, crunch, crunch. His feet sank into the snow. He walked with his toes pointing out, like this. Crunch, crunch, crunch. And then he walked with his toes pointing in, like that. Crunch, crunch, crunch. That's a really fun thing to do in the snow. And then he dragged his feet slowly to make tracks. And he found something sticking out of the snow that made a new track. was a stick that was just right for smacking a snow-covered tree. Down fell the snow, plop, on top of Peter's head. He thought that it would be fun to join the big boys in their snowball fight, but he knew he wasn't old enough. Not yet. So he made a smiling snowman, and he made angels. He pretended he was a mountain climber. He climbed up a great big tall heaping mount of snow and slid all the way down. He picked up a handful of snow and another and still another. He packed it round and firm and he put the snowball in his pocket for tomorrow. Then he went into his warm house. He told his mother all about his adventures while she took off his wet socks. And he thought and thought and thought about them. Before he got into bed, he looked in his pocket. His pocket was empty. The snowball wasn't there. He felt very sad. While he slept, he dreamed that the sun had melted all the snow away. But when he woke up, his dream was gone, and the snow was everywhere. New snow was falling. After breakfast, he called to his friend from across the hall, and they went out together into the deep, deep snow. And that is the end of The Snowy Day by Ezra Jack Keats. So this is one of my favorite Ezra Jack Keats, but my very, very favorite is one called Peter's Chair, and it's about Peter having a little sister being born. And I love that story, but sadly I could not get it. But Ezra Jack Keats is definitely an author that is worth checking out because his amazing, amazing books. Very, very much like Leo Leone and Eric Carle with those really, really cool illustrations that are very textural, which I really, really like. Okay, the song that I am going to sing you is a very silly song, and it has a lot of words. Now, I wanted to tell you why I used to love this song. My grandpa, Papi Yoakum, was a huge wordsmith, which meant he used to love to put words together. So this song always makes me think of him, and it's called Mrs. Murphy's Chowder. Oh, won't you bring back, Mrs. Murphy's chowder? It was tuneful, every spoonful, it made yodel louder. After dinner, Uncle Ben used to fill his fountain pen with a bowl of Mrs. Murphy's chowder. There was ice cream, cold cream, benzene, gasoline, soup beans, string beans floating all around. Sponge cake, beefsteak, mistake, stomachache, cream puff, feed mouse, many to be found. Silk hats, door hats, bell slaps, Democrats, cowbells, doorbells beckon you to dine. Meatballs, fish balls, mothballs, cannonballs, come on in, the chowder's fine. Oh, won't you bring back, Mrs. Murphy's chowder? It was tuneful, every spoonful made yodel louder. If they sell it where you are, you might might find a motor car in a bowl of Mrs. Murphy's chowder. Okay, let me take a big breath and get ready for this, because there was ice cream, cold cream, benzene, gasoline, soup beans, string beans floating all around. Sponge cake, beefsteak, mistake, stomachache, cream puffs, earmuffs, many to be found. Silk hats, doormats, bed slats, Democrats, cowbells, doorbells beckon you to dine. Beach ball, fish ball, mothball, cannonball, come on in. The chowder's fine. So there you have a very silly song about Mrs. Murphy's chowder. Okay, the last story I want to share with you, still got songs on the mind, is from A.A. Milne's Now We Are Six, with decorations by Ernest H. Shepherd. This story is very near and dear to my heart because this is a story my mother used to read to me. And I think more than the story itself was the way that my mother used to read this to me that makes it so special. So I'm going to try to read it to you the way that my mother read it to me when I was a little child. So let me show you, you know, the pictures in here. Ernest H. Shepherd's pictures are always very tiny and they're very detailed. So let me see if I can get that in there just so you can get an idea of the picture before I begin. King John's Christmas. I'm going to try to do it like my mother. King John was not a good man. He had his little ways, and sometimes no one spoke to him for days and days and days. And men who came across him when walking in the town gave him supercilious stare, or passed him with their noses in the air, and bad King John stood dumbly there, blushing beneath his crown. King John was not a good man, and no good friends had he. He stayed in every afternoon, but no one came to tea. And round about December, the cards upon his shelf, which wished him lots of Christmas cheer and fortune in the coming year, were never from his near and dear, but only from himself. King John was not a good man, yet he had his hopes and fears. They'd given him no presents now for years and years and years. But every year at Christmas, while minstrels stood about, collecting tribute for the young, for all the songs they might have sung, he stole away upstairs and hung a hopeful stocking out. King John was not a good man. He lived his life aloof. Alone he thought a message out and climbed upon the roof. He wrote it down and popped it against the chimney stack. To all and sundry near and far, F. Christmas in particular, and signed it not Johannes R., but very humbly, Jack. Let me show you. There he is. I want some crackers and I want some candy, and I think a box of chocolates would come in handy. I don't like oranges, I do like nuts, and I should like a pocket knife that really cuts. And oh, Father Christmas, if you love me at all, bring me a big red India rubber ball. King John was not a good man. He wrote this message out, and gat him on the roof again, descending by the spout. And all that night he lay there, a prey to hopes and fears. I think that's it coming now. Anxiety bedewed his brow. He'll bring one present anywhere, the first I've had in years. Forget about the crackers and forget about the candy, and I'm sure a box of chocolates would never come in handy. I don't like oranges, and I don't want nuts, and I have a pocket knife that almost cuts. But oh, Father Christmas, if you love me at all, bring me a big red India rubber ball. King John was not a good man. Next morning when the sun rose on Let me start that again. King John was not a good man. Next morning when the sun rose up to tell a waiting world that Christmas had begun, the people seized their stockings and opened them with glee. The crackers, toys, and games appeared, and lips where sticky sweets were smeared. King John said grimly, as I feared, nothing again for me. Oh, poor King John. I did want crackers and I did want candy, and I know a box of chocolates would come in handy. I do love oranges and I did want nuts, and I haven't got a pocket knife, not one that cuts. And oh, Father Christmas, had you loved me at all, he would have brought me a big red India rubber ball. King John stood by the window and frowned to see below the happy bands of boys and girls all playing in the snow. And while he stood there watching and envying them all, when through the window, big and red, there hurled by his royal head and bounced and fell upon the bed an India rubber ball. And oh, Father Christmas, my blessings on you fall, for bringing him a big red India rubber ball. Let me show you the picture there. There he is. And that is the story of King John's Christmas. I used to love the way that my mother would say, a big red India rubber ball. And I love how she used to do that. So that is a story that remains in my memories for all these years, many, many years, over 50. Well, everybody, it's time to say goodbye. So let's wave goodbye. Goodbye, Madeline. Goodbye, Lillian. Goodbye, Gabriella. I'll see you all next time. Goodbye, JC. Goodbye, Delilah. Goodbye, Allie. I'll see you all next time. Goodbye, Ollie. Goodbye, Maya. Goodbye, Charlotte. I'll see you all next time. Goodbye, Helen. Goodbye, Danny. Goodbye, Brett. I'll see you all next time. Goodbye, Eli. Goodbye, Lily. Goodbye, Isabella. I'll see you all next time. Well, everybody, I'll be back on Wednesday with some more songs and stories. But until then, let's give ourselves a high five. There's one for me, and there's one for you. And now, if you would like, it's time for a big hug. So take one hand, put it on your shoulder. Take the other hand, put it on your other shoulder, and squeeze really, really tight. And there's a big hug from me to you. I will see you guys all on Wednesday. Bye, everybody. Have a happy Memorial Day.